You weren't born doubting yourself. So who taught you not to trust yourself?
Maybe you think confidence is something you lost. Maybe you believe some people are simply born believing in themselves, while others never are. But that's rarely how it begins. No one wakes up one morning suddenly unable to trust their own decisions. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Every time you promise yourself you'll start tomorrow. Every time you decide to change, then don't. Every time you ignore what you already know is right. Your mind pays attention, not to what you hope, but to what you repeatedly do. Little by little, it starts learning a painful lesson. Your words can no longer be trusted. And once that happens, self-doubt doesn't appear out of nowhere. It becomes the natural consequence of broken trust.
Trust is never built through intention. It's built through evidence. Think about the people you trust most. You trust them because their actions consistently match their words. Your brain applies exactly the same rule to you. Every promise you keep becomes evidence that you are reliable. Every promise you abandon becomes evidence that you're not. The problem is that most people only notice the big failures. They overlook the hundreds of tiny agreements they quietly break with themselves every week. I'll wake up earlier. I'll stop procrastinating. I'll have that difficult conversation. I'll finally begin. Nothing dramatic happens when those promises are ignored, but something changes internally. Your brain quietly updates its expectations. It stops believing what you say, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it's simply learning from your behavior. And behavior always speaks louder than intention. Eventually, something strange begins to happen. You stop making bold decisions, not because you're incapable, because you no longer believe you'll follow through. Before you've even started, a quiet voice already whispers, "What's the point? You'll probably quit again." That voice feels like insecurity. But insecurity is often nothing more than remembered experience. Your past behavior becomes your future expectation. This is why confidence can't be created by positive thinking alone. You can't convince yourself you're reliable while repeatedly proving the opposite. Real confidence isn't built with motivational words. It's built through repeated evidence. Evidence that says, when I make a commitment, I keep it. Until that evidence exists, doubt will always sound more believable than hope. There's another hidden consequence. When you stop trusting yourself, you begin trusting everything else more. Other people's opinions, other people's timing, other people's certainty. You start asking everyone what you should do, searching for reassurance before every decision, not because the answers aren't already inside you, but because you've stopped believing your own judgment. The more this pattern continues, the weaker your inner voice becomes. Eventually, you mistake dependence for wisdom. You believe confidence comes from collecting enough advice. But confidence doesn't grow by borrowing certainty from others. It grows when you repeatedly prove that your own decisions deserve to be respected. And that process can never be outsourced. The good news is that trust can be rebuilt, but not in the way most people imagine. You don't rebuild trust by making bigger promises. You rebuild it by making smaller ones, small enough that keeping them becomes inevitable. One promise, one action, one completed commitment. Again and again. Your brain doesn't need dramatic transformation. It needs consistency. Every promise you keep sends a quiet message. I can believe this person. At first, nothing seems different. The doubts remain, the fear remains. But underneath those feelings, something begins to change. Your identity slowly adjusts, not because you forced yourself to think differently, because your actions finally gave your mind a new story to believe.
This is why discipline is often misunderstood. People think discipline is about forcing yourself. It isn't. At its core, discipline is an act of self-respect. Every time you honor your own commitment, you're doing more than completing a task. You're repairing a relationship. The relationship between you and yourself. Over time, that relationship becomes stronger, not because life becomes easier, but because your mind finally has evidence that your future actions can be trusted. Confidence grows quietly, almost invisibly, exactly the same way it disappeared. One decision at a time, one promise at a time, one ordinary day after another.
Before this video ends, ask yourself one simple question. If someone treated you the way you've treated yourself over the past year, would you trust them? It's an uncomfortable question, but it reveals something important. Self-confidence isn't something you discover, it's something you earn through repeated honesty with yourself. Every promise you keep becomes another reason to believe. Every action you finish becomes another piece of evidence. And over time, those small moments create something much bigger than motivation. They create self-trust. If you've stopped believing in yourself, it doesn't mean you're broken. It may simply mean your mind has been paying attention to your actions. The encouraging part is this: if your behavior taught your brain not to trust you, your behavior can also teach it to trust you again. One promise, one decision, one ordinary day at a time. If this video helped you understand yourself a little better, subscribe to One Choice Away and explore more videos about psychology, self-awareness, emotional patterns, and the invisible habits that shape the person you become. Because changing your life doesn't always begin with believing in yourself. Sometimes, it begins by becoming someone you can finally trust.